Hey, on today's episode of the Glue Guys, the Nets are back.
Yeah.
Championship run, Brian.
Great game, Mike. Let's get right into it.
Welcome back to the Glue Guys. This is Mike here. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on Twitter at BK Glue Guys. NetsDaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself on the paywall at theathletic.com/Glue Guys. A subsidiary of the New York Times Company. Brian.
Mike.
First off, before we even get to the game, shout out Bilga Abiri, the fantastic film critic for New York Magazine. He had a conversation with New York Magazine's podcast critic, Nicholas Qua, where Bilga was asked, what are some of your favorite NBA pods? We were on that list. We were first on the list,
Okay.
But there were three Nets pods, Brooklyn Buzz, and Locked On Nets, and us.
Gotta take some time to stroke our egos before the show. We gotta do it.
Well, after the disaster that was in Brooklyn.
No, positives only, Mike. We're going with positives. Yeah, Royce. How about that, Royce O'Neal? Man, he had a game.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be the one positive. We are going to talk about the season opener for the Brooklyn Nets, the start of the championship run. What a disaster! What an utter, disgusting display of basketball.
What went wrong,
think?
Mike? What went wrong? What was? I mean, I have my thoughts, but what are your thoughts?
I think it starts back in 2019, June 30th.
This
team was built.
Back. Paint a picture.
So Brian Lewis, in his write-up in the New York Post, had a very distinct paragraph. It was really two sentences, and this is all you need to know. The Nets were hammered 36-4 on second chance points. Let that sink in and marinate. Sink it in and marinate that, Brian.
Okay.
And then he says, before moving on to the fact they were out-rebounded 61-39 and outplayed all game long. Hammerjacked. They were hammerjacked.
They got swanton bombed on the boards, Mike. It was bad. But I mean, in general, it was bad in a lot of other ways too. So like that's a good data point for one way we were bad, but we were bad in many other ways too, which we can elucidate in great detail on this podcast. Well, here's what I'll say. The first thing that jumps off the page for me is that, you know, in both instances, if we're framing a narrative, if we're building, you know, it's sports talk radio, you know, morning after the game. My narrative is the starting lineup has some problemos, Mike. We're missing Seth Curry and or Joe Harris badly in this situation. I don't know if that's even like the total solution. And again, I don't want to jump to crazy conclusions based on one game. Like, let's not fall into that trap. Okay, that's a trap that people will fall into, and we're not going to do it. But there were some moments there where you began to. It was hard to push the doubt demons, you know, down the hole, down the feeling hole, where they belong. Because we came out and it was a slop fest, and then we did it again in the second half after a little bit of momentum change towards the end of the second quarter. Came out in the third quarter and did the exact same stuff. And, you know, optically, it wasn't great. There was just a lot of confusion. There was a lot of just sort of lapses in judgment over and over again. Again, we're kind of still, we do the thing that we do every season, which is like, let's get Nick Claxton engaged in the offense. And that seems to be like the thing on the whiteboard that's like, you know, there's a big star by it. And I love Nick Claxton, don't get me wrong. But he is not a focal point. That is a thing. That is a thing that we should let, you know, just drift off into space. Him being like your pick and roll guy he's just not. He just doesn't have the timing right. He doesn't have the hands for it. There was a lot of plays ran where he would be sort of the last guy, the finishing person on an offensive play, and it just like kind of collapsed for a variety of reasons. Sometimes he didn't roll right in time. Sometimes he didn't catch the ball. I don't want to like fixate on Nick Claxton, but unfortunately we were trying to like get him engaged, and it wasn't really working. And then we do the thing which we always do, which is what you have to do in that situation. Okay, the offense, when we try to do the system version, isn't working. Let's defer to Kyrie and KD, and then Kyrie is off. Oh, rats. Now we have nothing. We have just truly nothing going. KD.
But not just that. Like, we have to explore him being off. We have to dive deeper into him being off. It's like when you make a Hollywood movie and it costs $125 million. And you think you may have something. You're like, let's throw another $75 million at this movie. And you know what? It's a dud. It's Black Adam.
It's Morbius. Damn it. We made Morbius again.
Morbius was pretty good.
Did you see Morbius?
No, I didn't see Morbius.
I mean,
a little scary. Too scary for me.
Morbius is too scary for you.
I know, I'm just playing in the meme.
Yeah.
But here, I just want a competent basketball team for once in my life. This team hasn't had a competent basketball system since Kenny Atkinson was fired. Since pre-KD Kyrie. There have been glimmers. There's been moments. There's been times when you could peek through the Swiss cheese holes and you could see it. But I know, first game of the season. The funny thing is, I had Sarah Kustok on. Nets on Yes.
Nicely done.
Multi-time Emmy winner. What a mensch that Sarah Kustok is. And, I was like reasoned with her, right? Like she just brings this energy of that everything's going to be okay. Let's give everyone a chance. And I even said, I hope this team is allowed to have a journey. I hope this team, because we have to remember the Celtics last year sucked for the first 2 months of the season. And then obviously they went to the championship. And I mostly believe that. In my heart, that's what I believe. And that I hope this team has a nice runway. But I just want to see competent, flowing basketball. We have two of the most electric, excellent players in the history of their generation, let's just say, in Kyrie and KD. We have Ben Simmons, who, yes, Rusty. That's his new name. I don't know if you saw The Athletic put out a little quote card. It was a picture of Ben Simmons, and after the game, Steve Nash said he was rusty. So Rusty Simmons, we got little old Rusty Simmons over there, who is an exciting player on his own front. But it was just you talked about it. It was the dueling banjos offense. It was KD, go get a bucket. Kyrie, go get a bucket. Oh, Kyrie can't get a bucket in this game. Oh, let's scramble and let's see what Ben Simmons can do. Ben Simmons took 3 shots from the field.
Yeah.
Negative 26 plus minus, which, plus minus. I don't even know why I reference it. I just want to see a competent basketball team. And I will say this as a counterpoint. The Pelicans, right? The fearsome Pelicans, now the expected NBA champions for how much they laid a beatdown on your Brooklyn Nets. That team is as disjointed as the Nets. They just don't get as much coverage about it. Zion hadn't played since May of 2021. So he had as long of a streak as Ben Simmons of not playing basketball, just about, I think, right? When did Ben Simmons stop playing? 2020 or 2021?
I don't know. Yeah. A year and a half ago, whatever.
Yeah, same. Yeah. So basically the same time frame. CJ McCollum was added to the team, around the trade deadline. Him and Brandon Ingram, didn't have a ton of time to work everything out. This team, the Pelicans, are forming too. Everyone at the beginning of the year is forming into who they hope to be. This is the step one of a long process. Yeah. And they look like a basketball team, and we look like a bunch of dudes rolling out that ball and taking shots. And it's and to put a finer point on it, I'm not blaming Kyrie. I'm not blaming KD. And I promise I won't harp on this all year. But I have yet to see a piece of evidence. I know this is the first game of the season. Steve Nash, you're on notice, my friend. Okay. You are on notice.
All right.
I don't care about your Viore sponsorship or your new business where you think you have a fitness app. You're trying to break into the fitness app space, which I don't know if he's doing that. He's breaking in to the fitness app space.
Okay.
Maybe focus on your app. Because you ain't.
Wow.
I just need to see it.
Tech pivot coming up.
Am I too hot and bothered? Is it too much?
And I'm trying to do.
I just get so I just want to watch good basketball. I want to the whole point of following a team, Bri, is that you have fun.
I'm looking for my tank of copium right now because I'm going to give some copium takes. I actually think the Pelicans are pretty good. And I think it's a tough matchup for us, especially if we don't have our primary floor spacers, because they are they're thick with 3 or 4 C's, Mike, in the middle. Okay, they're a thick team, and if we're if we're Nick Claxton,
that's a couple of CCs of thick, right there, my friend.
You got it, buddy. And look, if our offense is now kind of hindered by that lack of spacing, and we're requesting Nick Claxton and Ben Simmons to be I don't know, doing things out of the post, or getting into playing post defense, for God's sakes, for Nick Claxton against Valanciunas was that's a tough matchup. So I don't want to. Again, this is my canister of copium. I'm not trying not to go too crazy with it, but I do think it's a rough matchup for us, especially if we don't have our primary 3-point shooting weapons at hand. They can't come back soon enough, Mike. We cannot have this amount of non-shooters surrounding this team. Because
really, where it hurts you is like, so Patty Mills had a good game, good Patty Mills game,
and when he was actually making shots, it was like those were the sets that were like successful. It was the Patty Mills was like corner 3 sets, like when that was working, that was working.
And so what you have out there is Cam Thomas gets 13 minutes, Emnon Sumner, who a little shaky for Fort Sumner over there.
Yeah, he started to kind of by the end of it, he started to figure it out a little bit. But yes,
I'm sure he's on an upward trajectory in terms of greatness. Yeah. But you get minutes from guys out there that, like, I think, didn't Kess get in earlier in the game? I know he only got 4 minutes. I thought he got in earlier in the game. But the problem is that, yes, the Pelicans probably are the worst matchup in the NBA for the Nets because they are so dominant. They will be so dominant. They may be the best rebounding team because they have a true center in Valanciunas, who's always been a very good rebounder. Zion is an absolute monster freak. And beyond that, they even have Herb Jones, like defensive slasher bro. Brandon Ingram, plenty of height there. And since they don't have a real point guard, CJ McCollum is going to be taller than most other teams' point guards to begin. They're a big team. Even off the bench, it's like Larry Nance Jr. Yeah. They have dudes. Trey Murphy was startling and devastating to the Nets too. But the thing, you bring up Joe Harris and Seth Curry. I just hated that, and Kevin Durant talked about this before the season, about how we debunked this theory. We Joe Rogan this theory. But that, when he went out with injury last year, he thought the team should have kept winning games. When, if you dig into the games when he went out with injury, it was like Kyrie played one of them, or Harden only played one of them, and then there was injuries, and like there was a starting lineup of a bunch of terrible players. But is Joe Harris that important? Is he that important?
I would say he alone is not that important, but one of the two of them we do kind of need. And that's a reflection on a lack of depth, Mike. I mean, and to your point, I think I agree that if that's truly the case, that's a surprisingly lean roster.
Because we got in this situation, the bench felt very much like it felt last year without Curry and Harris.
I mean, the bench felt like I was like, oh my God, we're getting like real Daron Sharp minutes here. Like this is the state of our bench. And we do this thing where we kind of like fixate on the fringes. Again, I want to say like primary reason that this went hinky was because the starting lineup was disjointed to begin with, and then we defaulted to our plan B, which is Kyrie and KD go get a bucket. Kyrie wasn't able to do that, so that was the failure. But to fixate a little bit on the margins, Daron, he is not ready to play that amount of minutes at this level, Mike. I'm just going to come out and say it.
I'm trying to look up his shot chart from last night because he was 1 of 8 from the field, which usually for center is not a good sign. I don't know if you track.
Yeah. That field goal percentage at that position is rough.
And so like it's just so I didn't want to do like overreaction theater for the first game. And I think what we can within context say is that, like, sure, the Nets looked bad last night. They could be a better, it's game 1. We're not going to remember this game in 2 weeks. But they talked all offseason. Markieff Morris said this himself about the Nets last year, is that they got pushed over. Like, they were a team you could just bowl over. And you get out-rebounded 61-39 or whatever it was. That's kind of coming out and not listening to your own scouting report on some level.
And
right?
Like, on paper, I mean, the decision to play Daron makes sense. If you're getting beat on the boards and he's built like a brick shithouse, Mike, so you throw him in there. But the problem is he's never in the right place at the right time. It's a positional thing. He just doesn't have that intuition quite yet. It's about reps. I don't know what. He gets like loosey-goosey and he starts kind of getting like, tunnel vision on just like ball hunting. And it's like, bro, if you just figure out a way to box out either of Zion or Valanciunas, and that's what you're really here for. But he kept kind of like roving around. I mean, I watched back some of the game, and even on the offensive sets, like, I was kind of like watching him because he came in first big off the bench with like around 5 or 6 minutes to go in the first quarter. Like, he's in there early and is like setting picks to nowhere. There's nobody being picked. He's just not facing the guy who has the ball, setting a pick on a man who's not cutting. And like there's moments like that happen like pretty frequently, and it's just like, where are you? What are you doing? What's happening? And anyways, I'm grilling him a little bit hard right now, and I feel bad about it because he shouldn't be in this position. He should not be in this position where we have to grill him. But unfortunately, that's the state of the roster. So I mean, and again, we're on the fringes, but it just like those types of things were popping off the page to me. It's those details with guys further down the roster who are now asked to play larger roles, bigger minutes, and they just don't feel like they're up to speed.
This just for the YouTube audience. I'm innovating here, okay? Though my background is now Dayron's shot chart, and if I turn my head like this, look at those X's. X's are bad, okay?
Yeah.
Green circles. He has one little green circle literally within the basket.
Yeah.
Look at all those X's, man. There's another X at the 3-point line.
Is that one X like right in the middle, just like 5 overlapping each other? Is that the?
Yeah, it's 5 overlapping X's. And then he took a shot here, and then there's like a 3-point shot right in my sternum.
Yeah.
Okay, that of course that missed, but I mean, it's a wide open shot from the top of the key. I'm sure that was fine.
It was garbage minutes, capital G garbage minutes.
If you think if he's 50% from the field, it's 6 more points. The game's a little bit closer. Like all these little things add up to this team getting hammerjacked on opening night in front of the crowd. Let's do this quick break. Coming back, I have a positive. I have two.
Okay.
Oh, I have 2 positives, but one big one that I really want to lay out.
Let's get into it. Love that.
And we're back, Brian. Here's a positive for you. Okay, we went pretty hard at the top, and we're going a little soft. Okay.
Okay.
So after the game, Kevin Durant, of course, spoke with the media, and here's what Kevin Durant had to say. Again, getting this from the Brian Lewis story in the New York Post. He says, first quarter down 32-14, I came out and had 3 turnovers, and then the first shot I took was just a horrible shot. I just set a bad precedent for the rest of the night, so I've got to come out more locked in. I've just got to be better. Here's the positive. The fear about this team is that if things go bad, things explode. That if we veer down the path of losing, KD will reignite his trade request. They'll fire Steve Nash. Kyrie will decide to, fly to Moscow to free Brittany Griner or something. Like he will leave the team, right? And I know this is a normal quote from Kevin Durant that I've got to be better. He's a leader of the team. He did have those 3 turnovers early though. Like he's so good that he can like stop being bad pretty quickly. And he had a really good game after that. He was about one of the few Nets that had a good game. I like to see this quote. I like to see that he's saying as a leader that I've got to come in more locked in and I've got to be better, because it's not that Katie's not that kind of guy. It's just that I would have expected maybe even a little bit more standoffish, because the way that he's been talking about the team has felt very much like he wasn't taking blame for what went wrong in Brooklyn. Maybe he doesn't agree with that. I know he listens, but it didn't seem like he was an equal partner in the disaster that was last season.
Yeah.
He is taking part. He's taking ownership, not even partnership, but ownership about what happened in the game last night.
Yeah.
And as the best player on the team, as cliche as that is, I like to see it.
Are you getting worried at all about his propensity to just kind of like dribble off his foot and like just kind of like give up weird turnovers? Because this kind of was a carryover from, this was happening in the Celtics series, like nonstop somehow. Just like these real
the Celtics series was so, people don't talk about how bad KD was at times in the Celtics series.
Like just the most bizarre, like, sort of middle school turnovers of just like, running into somebody off their thigh or whatever. And like, that was kind of happening, especially in the first quarter, kind of when we're trying to set the tempo, we're trying to really cement our offensive sets. And there's at least 2 that I can think of, just like sloppy KD turnovers. Are we worried that there's like, that's going to be a thing? Like, what has that always been the case? Or we just have like weird small sample size theater for this?
It really stands out to us, but it has always sort of been the case that because he's 7 feet tall and becomes a primary ball handler, and we know because of that shot against Milwaukee 2 playoffs ago that he has big feet. You know, his feet's so big that he can't shoot a 3-point shot. They all have to be 2-point shots.
Right.
He does have these things where the ball will just kind of leave him.
Yeah.
He has the tightest handle of any 7-footer,
Right.
maybe ever, but still,
Yeah.
he's a 7-footer trying to, dribble drive and put up jumpers and all that stuff. I'm not as concerned about it.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't know what I'm really trying
really
to.
bad.
I don't know what I'm trying to say
No,
here,
I
but,
know.
but yeah, I'm just thinking about like our half court offense. Like when I'm just thinking of those sets, and it's like these like kind of dribble handoffs to nowhere, and then like all of a sudden there's 9 seconds left, and it ends up in like Katie's hands, and. I'm just trying to think like who's supposed to be doing. The only person that seemed to be cutting is Royce O'Neal, and like a lot of whenever a play was going right. Is because he was kind of the connective tissue in between, like he was like the third pass or whatever that led to the the hockey assist or whatever it was. But again, this goes back into the like this lame talking point of like where's the activity? And I don't want to do that all season. I don't want to set that precedent.
Well, but it has to be said because like this team lost Bruce Brown and they got Royce O'Neal. And Royce O'Neal, if you're going to do the other positive, we talked about at the top, he is the positive. 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 3 steals, 3 assists. 2 for 3 from 3, 4 for 7 from the field. So a very efficient, no turnovers. Like he literally did almost nothing wrong in terms of just like pure box score, blah blah blah. And when you watch the game, I mean, he had like a couple of those deflections. He had that series where there was like he got 2 deflections to get the ball back to the nets. And I'm happy that he's playing on this team, but. This game, part of when we talk about like the Nets got bullied, right? Well, the way to fight back, and this will be another positive. Ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
I like that Ben Simmons fouled out.
Whoa.
Because even though he only took 3 shots and he was 0 for 2 from the free throw line, he wasn't turtling.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was trying to guard Zion. He was He has no fear on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like as much as we like to, that we like to talk about, but the amount that we talk about his mental health issues, and how he passed up the dunk against the Hawks, on defense he has no fear. Mm-hmm. Like he is trying to guard the best players, and he's trying to guard every position, and he'll switch on to anyone. And he likes the battles against Giannis. It seems like, and he was trying against Zion, who Zion is like second in the league. Compared to Giannis as being completely unguardable and overpowering.
Yeah.
I was very happy to see. I mean, like I know they didn't want Simmons to foul out, and once he fouled out, the game was essentially over. I'd rather him be aggressive and reckless. And as he said after the game, he described it as excited. He said, "I knew I couldn't foul out. I shouldn't foul out. I'm a motor on this team." Something that Steve Nash said too, but. I can't foul out, but I was just so excited to be out there.
Yeah.
I want that excitement because Durant and Kyrie are never going to be, this isn't who they are. They're not going to be bullies or energy providers or guys they're just not physical in that way. So when you go up against a team like the Pelicans, you kind of need Ben Simmons to be throwing his body around. You need Royce O'Neal to be doing it. And Nick Claxton, I think it was his muscles helped a little bit.
Yeah.
His swollenness. That's why I kind of wanted to see if like Markieff Morris could have got in there and just maybe punched someone in the face, but he didn't do that. He only played 3 minutes.
Yeah, that was weird too. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what to do with like. I'm just trying to think of what to do. And in the interim,
they need to sign Conor McGregor. And just let him punch people in the face.
I think there's something needs to happen with the Nick Claxton, Ben Simmons starting lineup. And again, this is going to be like the talking point of the season, probably, of just like, let's play Ben Simmons at the 5 on offense, have him stop. Because like when he even like does like play point guard on offense, it doesn't. It's not breaking down his first defender kind of. Point guard stuff. That's more we have Kyrie Irving who can do that. And so at times it's still this thing of like how to integrate this guy, and I'm just like lamenting the fact that that's going to be the talking point for this entire season. I can just feel it coming now, where it's just like, hey, we don't have enough spacing, especially with Nick Claxton and playing together. Can they play together? Blah blah blah. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, but we say I don't disagree with you. Like Claxton, he presents problems, but this team got out rebounded to such a degree that if you took Claxton off the floor, it would have been 70-20 or whatever it would have been, 70-30. And like, so at some point you just have to, you try to have a equilibrium on your team. You can't have a perfect situation one side and just be a disaster on the other.
I mean, the other part of that metric, though, is missed shots lead to rebounds.
Very nice. Very nice, Brian.
Right. So if you make more of the shots with presumably more spacing, you have less rebounds to be grabbed in general.
I know. I think it's going to be the difficult thing about this team all year is that because Claxton, he had 10 rebounds, which is a very nice number, but he doesn't feel like what Drummond felt like. And of course, Drummond's one of the best rebounders of his generation. But like where Drummond would take up so much space, or Brook would take up so much space down low, and Brook classically didn't get a lot of rebounds, but he was so big that the team got rebounds off of his boxing.
That's the big brain, deep analytics. It's not individual rebounding, Mike. It's the team. It's the team
rebounding. Yeah. Claxton's very much like he can get pushed over, or he gets the rebound, and it's great when he does. But like he doesn't consume the bottom by the basket the way that like a Drummond.
No, he's a pogo stick jumper guy, and oftentimes he gets it because of his just length and stuff. But he's not a particularly good like boxer outer. I don't think. I think he's more inclined to lose the rebound in general if he boxes out just because he's so lean.
Like even like a PJ Tucker, like big butt PJ. That's a kind of guy. Like maybe that's why I want to see what Markieff Morris does. We just need a little bit of a bowling ball energy down there who can push the other center around. But the Pelicans are. I mean, again. We talked about this, but that is a beastly team. That starting lineup with no point guard and just going with CJ, Herb Jones, Valanciunas. I mean, I've always loved Valanciunas.
You've talked about him a lot.
I've tried to trade for him many, many times. And Zion. I mean, Zion looked just phenomenal.
Yeah, I wish Ben Simmons could come back and look as good as Zion did when he came back. What's up with that?
I said something to Sarah Kustok, my new best friend, when I was talking to her on the pod, that I don't even think about Simmons' shooting. Like, I watch him. I want to see him assist, rebound. But he only took 3 shots, 2 for 3. I think they were – I don't know his shot chart, but they were probably mostly dunks. I know one of them was a dunk. Mm-hmm. Does this team need Simmons to score more than 4 points a game?
You would hope. That.
Is that a hot take?
I don't know that they need him to, but I mean, just for the sake of everyone's state of mind and self-worth, I think you would want more than 4 points per game. Again,
all the shots were right at the basket. By the way,
this is Russ. I'm more looking to just see. You make a good point about him being engaged on defense, and this is going to be this pain in the ass talking point for the entire season. But despite being sort of limited on offense, you catch him kind of sitting in no man's land pretty frequently for a guy who's trying to get his mojo back. You want to see a lot more. Cut it, whatever it is, whatever you got to do to get in there. I mean, I'm thinking back to moments too where there's just true lapses in initiative from everybody. There was one possession where there was 3 guys standing at the top of the key. I think Ben Simmons is one of them. And poor Dayron's got the ball at the top of the key with 3 defenders just beginning to swarm around him. And nobody's cutting, nobody's doing anything. They're kind of just hey, do you need me to hit the escape valve for you? And that's the offense. That was the offensive set for that, and of course it led to a turnover. And those types of things are just why is Dayron have the ball there in the first place? How has he not gotten rid of it by the time? If it touches his hands that far away, somebody needs to be careening off a screen and grabbing it from him in one way or another. He should never be in that position. So it's just and again, this goes back to your stuff about Nash. It's there should be some base expectations, some rules. That should not happen for Dayron. I don't care what's happening in an offense. There should just be a rule. Don't give him the ball that far away from the basket unless there's somebody who's immediately going to be there to take it from him.
I know that there's way more that goes into coaching an NBA offense. What I'm going to say is that Steve Nash's offensive philosophy is they will figure it out.
Yeah.
We just need to get the reps. The guys are so good. They will figure it out. maybe that will work out down the road. And I do. This team can definitely prove it has a lot of talent. When Seth and Joe come back, like if you think about the fact that if they can rotate Royce, Seth, Joe, and Patty within sort of like the wing shooter. I mean, Royce is more of a defender than any of those guys, but wing shooter roles. And then all you're really doing is mixing in KD, Kyrie, and Ben Simmons. And then you have Claxton and Sharp. And then what? You back it up with like a Markieff Morris. That you're feeling pretty good about yourself, right? Like that's a beastly offensive, at least, rotation. But, like this is never going to happen. But a Mike D'Antoni team would never look like this. Like at the very basic level, like you're talking about, like a Mike D'Antoni team would never leave Day'Ron Sharp wide, like to be swarmed by 3 defenders at the 3-point line. There would be some system that would at least focus in the talents and present a way that you could play winning basketball. Maybe it'll be different. They're going to figure it out. This, to give Nash a little credit, it is kind of tough to try to integrate what Ben Simmons does, his deficiencies plus his positives, into a roster that doesn't have a true point guard. Like if Simmons is the true point guard-ish on the team, well, as he develops, the team will maybe develop and get better. But Kyrie is not a point guard, even though he had 5 assists, whatever. That he's not. He's a shooting guard. That's who he is. He's a electric scorer who sometimes gets assists.
I'm just trying to think back to like, and I promised Alex Sturm I would not talk about James Harden, but this isn't really about James Harden. But like when we had the highest offensive rating in the history of basketball, like what was so different? Like what was happening there that was so markedly different from what's happening here? And I mean, like to the yeah, go ahead.
To me, it was like the waves of offense that would come. Like it would be if it was James Harden, Kyrie, KD, whatever. But it would be like they would start quickly with those guys, but then Joe Harris would be firing from deep. They would alternate the possessions where it would feel like, oh my God, Kyrie hits him in this spot, and then Kyrie drives the basket, and then KD would get a bucket. I mean, it was never an efficient. It was never like a. I don't know how to describe it. It was never a system offense even then, but James Harden's a true point guard. I mean, that's the thing.
I felt like it was a natural system in just that like James Harden does 2 things or gives up the ball. Like every possession had, okay, we're gonna maybe try a pick and roll. Okay, that didn't work. Now we're gonna do the James Harden sort of like attempt at a drive. Okay, didn't work. And then there's like the next sort of phase of the offense, which is now we go down the ranks. It's Kyrie's turn, and if all else fails, it's Kevin Durant's turn. In this case, like just again last night, like we defer to when the system fails, we defer to these 2 guys dueling banjos, as you often say, and it's getting like increasingly easier to guard that. I don't know why it feels that way, but like it feels like they're getting easier and easier to we're just getting more predictable or something. Like it's like still we haven't changed in 2 years. If you watched game footage from us last year, you'd be pretty up to speed, like in terms of if you were planning to play defense against the 2022-2023 Nets. You can watch a lot of last year's footage. It was a lot of the same stuff. It was basically a copy and paste. So I don't know what you can do at this point. I mean, I don't know, because like when all else fails, we just go to bucket getting.
Yeah, and again, Kyrie, KD are different than Luka, James Harden. So the heliocentric Harden, Luka types, while there are flaws in that system, like the super high usage, Trae Young is a good example of a guy who's super high usage. It can be successful, but there's a limit to it. But at least in those offenses, it's like, as you said, there's 2 things that happen. Harden drives to the bucket, gets fouled, or he puts up a 3. I guess the third thing would be the pick and roll and the roll to the hoop for the big man, right? Or shooters coming off, right? There are defined sort of things that happen. Kyrie and KD are these island players. They are guys who they are so individually talented, so gifted what they do that they can put up a shot anywhere on the floor. But it's not like a team offense.
Yeah.
That is just like they are Barry Pepper as a sniper and Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, that tank is going to aim its muzzle right at Barry Pepper.
It is. It's a hell of a muzzle. Yeah, and I don't know if do you feel this way, but it's like
they should tank. Yeah, tank this.
No.
Going for Wembanyama.
No. it feels like it's getting less and less effective over time. It feels like it's getting harder to make the shots, and there are less of them going in over time. Does it feel that way to you? This is pure back of the envelope. This is reaching. I'm listening to my heart instead of my mind here. But maybe it's just because like Kyrie had an off night, and when Kyrie has an off night, it looks truly awful. Like everything looks really, really like abysmal. And so that's because that wasn't really the case for a lot of like even when he did play last year, like all those games were ascendant sort of like crazy, 60-point games, whatever. Like he was like really having when he did play amazing performances on an individual night basis. So we didn't have a lot of like duds. I mean, until the playoffs. Got a little duddier, not full duds, but this was like this was an unavoidable, like the only shots that he made were like the hardest shots that he took, which is again goes back into the memes of this team. Like the harder the shot gets, the more likely it is to go in.
Yeah. I mean, you can't say that about Kevin Durant.
No, Kevin Durant had a good game. He was, he put up nummies.
I don't know. You're right about Kyrie. I think the aesthetics of Kyrie because of what he can do. And then like, if you look at a shot chart, it's horrific. Like anything outside of 18 feet, he missed.
Yeah.
And there are threes all over the place. He took like he takes like some of the worst shots that you can possibly take on the floor because of what he does. And he's not a guy who traditionally gets fouled, so he's never going to get easy buckets. I mean, the whole thing about this team is they're going to get easy buckets. Yeah, I mean, that's why it all goes back to Ben Simmons. And, he's the only guy on the team that can run a point guardy offense.
Yeah.
And he needs to be operating. And it will be interesting to see Seth Curry, a guy that he's played with, Seth Curry and Joe Harris being shooters off of Ben. And whether, like, the exciting thing, the positive, is when those guys are back, can the Nets bench units be elite compared to other teams' bench units? So, like, their starters should be fine. Ultimately, they weren't, obviously, against the Pelicans. But the Nets' special sauce could be when the bench units come out and they have Simmons or KD or Kyrie on the floor with shooters and Markieff Morris. Can they just put up buckets and just completely dominate those minutes?
And why didn't Markieff get more minutes? Did we talk about that?
Steve Nash is a bad person. I think
he's just like got a personal vendetta or something. That was it.
Yeah, I think they signed him and they said you're never going to play again.
Yeah.
Perspective time. You ready?
Okay.
Last season, the Nets opened the season at the Milwaukee Bucks and lost in a pretty ugly fashion, 104-127. The next game, they came back at Philly and won at Philly. Then they lost to the Hornets. But then they beat the Wizards, lost to the Heat, then beat the Pacers, Pistons, Hawks, Pistons, Raptors. Lost again.
Are you trying to say it's a long season, Mike? Is that what I'm hearing? It's a long season.
They went 14-5. Let's say they went 16-6 into early December, right? So even off of an ugly opening loss, they played really well. They were the number one seed in the East at one point, and then of course Kevin Durant decided to snap his knee.
Yeah,
and everything went to hell.
Yeah. Look, I'm here for it. These takes could seem real stale in a week, and I'm praying for that. I'm super praying for that.
Well, our history would say that they will be stale because they'll play. As always, we do a really hot episode. Like the Nets come back, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, they're awesome." And they're playing Toronto at home. Toronto's really good, but if the Nets like dominate them, blah blah blah. Okay,
hey, Mike, where do they find us?
NBA Draft Prep. Go to tankathon.com. No. They can find us on Twitter at BKGlueGuys, netsdaily.com as always. We are on the New York Times' homepage. There's a big banner that says, click here for Glue Guys.
Yeah, and link to Mike Smeltz's LinkedIn page is on there.
Yep.
Yeah.
But only in the Philippines can you find that.
Discord.gg/GlueGuys. Get in there. The takes are spicier. It's gonna be cooler. If you want to be part of the community, that's where you really get into it because Twitter is a cesspool. But if you want to find us on Twitter at BKGlueGuys. Mike, thanks for having me on the big show.
Hey, thanks for being here.
Okay, bye everybody.